Are we there yet? There we go. All right. So yeah, I sat down and played with some of the ideas for this animation that I want to try to do with it this week, and I looked through some of my ideas for horror stories. Horror, horror. That's a heck of a word there. All right, and I I didn't go with one that I'd already come up with. I wanted to fabricate one on my own, and in this time frame of this week. It's not, digging up something that I had an idea for already. Um, but as I was playing with with ideas, I kept coming across this idea that I'm like, oh, I want to do this like the skeptic of like somebody's a skeptic and goes into a haunted hospital or a haunted psych ward or something like that, and um, or and I got to the point where I'm like, oh, like there's a patient in this psych ward who's seeing the ghosts of people who died in this psych ward years ago. And, just playing around with those ideas. And as I went back and forth with either the skeptic or the patient experiencing the ghosts and being tracked and hunted down by horrors from beyond regular dimension, encountering another character that they have to either someone who will help them or they can help that someone also escape. And I I had in my mind this formed idea of like, and you get to the end and it's revealed that the main character died years ago, and you're watching them replay out their last moments as a ghost. And I'm like, wow, that'd be great. And then I went like, oh, well, this is kind of the premise of a pretty well-known movie starring Bruce Willis. Oh crap! No, I like it can't be that derivative. Like, well, it wasn't really derivative, but it just can't hit so many of the same notes and not come across as derivative. And so, like, yeah, no, that idea was fun to play with, but I'm gonna have to rethink that. So, yeah, like the idea of the non-believer confronting a ghostly phenomenon and helping somebody else get away. I still kind of like the idea, but I don't think I can use it in the format that I'm playing with, and I need to stew on it longer. So I think I'm going to swap over to a different style of story, not like the horror ghost story, but maybe a little bit more in the realm of um, a little more along the lines of like a Lovecraftian feel, maybe. Um, I mean, I have some pieces of ideas that I was dabbling with years ago that I haven't done anything with yet. I'll think about it. I mean, it's. I feel like I could still maybe salvage the ghost story. I mean, like I said yesterday, it's you're never going to be the first one to write an idea, and you're not. The goal isn't to be the last word on such and such a topic. That's not the intent. But I would have to make some pretty hefty changes to make it distinct enough. Oh man, it's so hard because like I keep playing it over in my head, and it's like, okay, so the person they're trying to help is a patient at the hospital. Patient knows they're a ghost. He's a skeptic and a hospital worker who died in the hospital because of the ghost that's in the hospital. Like, this is that movie. And the more I try to like tweak it to get it away, the more pieces line up to fit that movie. And I was like, nope, I can't do that. And it's not because it's not a good idea and there's no way to do that movie ever again. It's just that if I want to make an animation, a short animation to tell a quick story and have it have some kind of impact enough on the viewer to be a neat idea, I have to do it so that the impact of the story stands on its own, not seeming like, oh, that's a great reimagining of it. No, I want it to be its own story. And like it's too close to um, another one that it'll it'll feel weaker as a creative endeavor for having like it would feel almost like somebody did a my own remake kind of idea. And while I have some projects I'm working on right now, some of them for this channel that are like, how would I reimagine such and such? Um, I have stuff like that, and their purpose is to discuss creative ways of reimagining an existing work. But that's not what this is supposed to be. This is supposed to be an original work of animation created in the week of this week. And so, in order to have the end result stand on its own, it can't be a remake or a look-alike to something else. So I have to think about that again. And there may be ways to salvage this. I'm just like, I'm a little frustrated because like I had this great idea. I was building on it all day and even started playing around with it before I went to bed last night and had like the first moments of it starting to click into place, only to within the last 2 hours realize, oh, it's too much like this existing work to be able to be done this way. I just it's a little frustrating to start assembling an idea like that as well as that seemed to really work well and realize that not that you're not even that you were subconsciously touching on something else that existed because it wasn't. It's just if you look at what you're doing and realize, oh, there's something like that already. It's there's always going to be a little something like whatever I do. Um, that's inevitable. Like, we've seen the movie Dancing with Wolves done as science fiction with aliens. It's not a bad movie, but it detracted from Avatar for it to be so much like Dances with Wolves. And I don't want that kind of detraction happening to the animation I make. Not that I imagine it's some great work, but I want to do a project that stands on its own. Not that I haven't done projects that stand on their own, but for this year's goals of creating content like this, along with my regular channel updates and creating prompts for other creators, that's that stuff I will continue to do. But my goal for this year was to be more actively involved in doing some of my own creations so that I have something to show for when I get up there and say, like, look, if you're interested in doing writing, here are some ideas you can do. Here's how you can do them. Share your work with me. I want to be able to reasonably say, like, I did this story this way here on this channel, so you can see what you could do too, and be able to point to something I did start to finish, rather than all these vague things about, like, some story I wrote under another name that I don't really want to share with the audience here because it's not really relevant to the stuff I'm doing here. I've published a book. It's sold some copies. It's available for download online under a different name than mine because I don't want to be known for that content. It's a different field than the creative writing that I do here. So it's I don't have example like I have my card game that I've been working on, and we've played it at a local play group, playtest group. I've played it with family members. It's enjoyed by many people, but I didn't make that here. You didn't see it happen, and so like I feel like it's important for that process to be out here. And so, like, I could go digging through my entire archive of ideas for story writing that I've built up over the last 20 years of writing down ideas. But that to me feels cheating. And so, like, when I had this idea, just whole cloth come to my head. Well, it didn't come whole cloth, piece by piece come to my head over the last 24 hours. Like, all right, we're getting into a stride of creating something from scratch from day one of, and then it's like, oh no, wait, this seems too familiar. And while it's not a copy of it, it's easy to see how somebody could interpret it as being too similar to an existing work. And it's not even so much that somebody else might go like, oh no, he's just copying them. Like, they could say that. That's not the problem for me. I think the problem for me on this one is more the idea that if you were to view my animation and you were in the first act of my short animation, go, oh, is this like that movie where this is going to happen next, and like you guess where it's going? That's a problem. that's the problem I want to avoid. Because it makes it a less of an experience because you already know how this is going to go. So that twist, that element that would have made it an interesting story, is gone now. Okay, no. I just bounced. My brain just bounced off an idea that I was. It was a script I did write. Uh, the majority of 3 years ago. It's science fiction, and it's another sort of a twist at the end, a horror realization uh, element to it, and um, it's not a full length movie, but as I sit here thinking about it, like it might actually be decent for doing with computer, like 8-bit artworks, but it is too long for an animated short. And I feel like I might be able to do the job of that story better with a combination of animation and live action elements. So I'll have to, I'll shelve that for later. But for a moment, it was like, oh, I think I cracked it. I think I figured out what I need to do. Nope, nope. Another, dead end on that trail. I have to find something that fits this format. All right. So where were we when we were digging through those ideas last night? So we were on. Nope, that's not where we're going. Okay, right there we go. No, I mean, like, there's things like a hacker science fiction horror film I could do, but it doesn't feel like what my mind wants to play with right now. I'm not in the mindset for a hacker, and that's more thriller than horror. I really like the idea of doing a little horror short. Okay, so like I do have a list of the Dewey Decimal System categories as well as genre lists that I could play in. I still really like the horror category. So ghost stories, monsters, thriller, weird fiction. Do I want to do a story piece? Like when I did the Phaeton Noir sampler that I did for my Choose Your Own Adventure YouTube video style before they got rid of annotations. Still working on that. I will get that right. I'm just having trouble with the mechanic that I have to use to replace the annotations. It's not as elegant as it could have been. All right, but I'm thinking like the setting for that. When I first came up with that idea, the main character and the story of the first one found itself saying, this is a bigger world with more interesting stories to tell. And there are a few sequels that popped into my mind for it. And in those sequels, you learn a little bit more about the main character, the private investigator Camden. I believe that's what I named him. I have to go back and look because it's been a while. But his backstory has elements of it that are that sort of weird World War horror. And you get pieces of the backstory encountered as he goes through the present time in the series, but um, it might be interesting to do a sort of horror World War story as an animated short. Maybe I'll put that on a potential. Um, dark fantasy, like a horror fantasy, cosmic horror, splatterpunk is not my style. I don't do splatterpunk so much. Gothic novels, which are sort of their own category, but also a relative of horror. Um, yeah, I mean, there's a potential to do like a trapped in a nightmarish landscape, being pursued by monsters. But there's a there's a feeling I want to get from this short, I think, where you start with the main character being a normal everyday person, and the story takes us both, the main character and the reader, observer, watcher, over into another realm where horrible things are the order of the day. It's, I think, for the feel I want to get from this is a little bit more of a departure from your world, cross the threshold into a world that's deeper and darker than you ever thought. And I'm not big on, like, if I really want to do that well, like the supernatural has to be an aspect, but not the aspect of the story. I mean, if you're watching this in the archive, like, what kind of horror fictions do you pay attention to? I mean, I may look back over and see like what kinds of things Stephen King has written in the past. Like in the Stephen King mindset, like Cujo is a story where there's not really any part of that story that's not the mundane world we live in. There's an appeal to the aspect of that story that says um, the world we live in has its horrors, and they don't they don't always come with a warning that lets you turn around before you get there. Um, there's that sort of like, this could happen to you, and it doesn't require suddenly weird alien gods or um, fairies or a mystic occurrence that causes a conjunction of planets to cause a gateway to open into the sky and let in a kraken monster. Some aspect of that weirdness that seems to get into some of the fiction. Like, not all horror needs the supernatural to make them work. I do like occasionally the quirky, like, because I mentioned yesterday where when I do some writing, sometimes I do a piece intending it to be one way, and somehow I start to include weird little bits of thought experiments, like the tunnels through the earth or the time travel letters. Um, my brain likes to throw in that little, thought experiment, um, but it should be reasonable within the context of the story and not a um, making the setting completely some other world. Yeah, minor setback with the idea that the story I came up with isn't going to work the way I wanted it to. But I think this is still salvageable. I'm going to spend. I'll do it here. I'll spend some time here still. Around 35 minutes, I think I might call it and just go see if I can plot a little further on my own. But so there's the possibility of a weird World War horror. What else did we have? Silence, sound. Could I do something with that one? That's a little weird. Like there's a weird aspect to it there that. Oh, wait, let's see. Years ago, on a day where I didn't have enough sleep, I had an experience. It was a little weird, a little creepy. Could I use that? A variation on that? Oh man, that would be an intense, but it's very, very cast heavy. You're gonna need 7 to 9 characters. You could probably get away with 4 or 5 rooms as the sets. That would be really, really hard. I'm not sure I'm up to it as a dialogue point of view in a short period of time. Oh God, that would be a lot. And it sort of touches back on the idea that I originally had for this, takes it in a different direction and makes completely changes the flavor of it. It's no longer a lights out movie, but ooh, that would be something. Oh wow, I might do that. Yeah. Okay. So I can't imagine what this looks like if you're watching this right now. Um, that's gotta sound like just like a weird way of doing that. But um, years ago, I was working in a market research firm in a mall, and we would do surveys, and it was a it was a rundown, quiet day. Um, I'm tempted to say it felt like a winter day, but it wasn't a winter day. Um, I know exactly what day it was. Um, but I was I was basically alone at the office for a fair amount of time. Uh, the boss had gone to a conference somewhere and left the assistant manager in charge, and he was completely incompetent. And his approach to dealing with the work was to clock himself out early and go home because the boss wasn't there to read him the riot act when he bounced out early. Um, and so I was there doing a lot of stuff myself, but I hadn't slept well for a couple days beforehand. And I had been just a general sense of unease. And um, in my sleep deprived state, the world takes on that hazy, not like it's hazy in one way, but it's sharper in another way. And, while I was experiencing that and, encountering people who weren't there, um, just sort of like a sense of, because it's a mall, there's a general feeling of a mall that this is a place that's traveled by people. And so even when there aren't people walking through a section, there's an ongoing sense of like, this is an area people walk through. And so if you just close your eyes and stand there against a wall, you can feel like it's a traveled place, a place with memories of people walking through it. And um, that sort of sense of space and its relation to people in it um, gets sharper when you're tired enough that the world you're walking around in gets duller. And so there was a definite sense of like being in a place where people who aren't there left a trace there. And um, it was it was a sort of a spooky enough feeling where like my mind was playing with that idea of like, what if there really are like people here and this is them wandering through some portion of this realm on another level. And what if they're ghosts? What if these people don't exist anymore and this is the last tale of them? This is what's left of them walking through this world, um, just on the edge of our own. And then I had that I had a few other things that made it more terrifying for that thought process. But then there was this moment of like, well, wait a minute, how do I know I'm the real one and these are the phantom people? What if I'm not living anymore? What if I'm the spirit wandering around aimlessly in here and these are the people I'm passing? They look phantom to me, but that's because I'm off to the side of their world. And so there's an aspect of that, like that could be a that could be an interesting animated short. Um, oh man, that might work really well. I mean, I'm taking the story a little bit in a further direction that I'm not revealing here because I don't want to spoil it already. Like I haven't written it yet. I haven't made the animation for it yet. Um, but it's got to be like a an office building or a mall or a school. Oh God, not a school. Oh, don't make it a school. I might have to make it a school. Oh, just because it makes such a visceral reaction in my mind and sort of in my soul to have that kind of response happen. Oh God. Oh, oh, that's gonna be heavy. Oh God. Oh, what have I got myself into? Oh Jesus. Oh, see, this is part of the fun of just playing with ideas is when pieces start to click together and interlink, and then they form this gel and just gel together into this thing in your head, and it's bigger than you. I didn't build this. Well, I mean, I guess technically I'm building this idea, but there's a sense that like I'm not a big enough creator to make those pieces fit together that way. Like that's too good a fit. Those pieces complement each other too well. It feels sort of like when I'm talking about writing the nonfiction book where I'm aggregating facts and assembling them in a way that's easier to consume. Um, this feels like that's kind of happening in my head right now, where you're. I mean, you may, based off of the clues I've given here, you may already be piecing some of this together. But um, yeah, I mean, it's just sort of like I didn't create this all from nothing. The experiences of the world as I've had them, everything that's happened to me growing up, all these little pieces feel like sometimes you're setting little bumpers at the right places so that when I come to a point where I'm working on a project like this, suddenly, like, I'm lined up to see it from the right angle to make it possible to stitch pieces together that weren't in contact with one another, but now slot together in a way to make a compelling work. It's a weird it's a weird sensation to be playing with disparate little pieces of ideas and personal experiences. Like if I hadn't been working in that retail and the market research environment those years ago and had that experience, I wouldn't be lined up right to see the potential in this story. Maybe I'd see a different story from different experiences that I had at the time. But it's amazing. Like it's amazing to see something so comprehensive and large an idea fit together with this chunk of meat I've gotten here, like feeling like it's woefully too small and incapable to be able to put something like what's occurring to my brain together. It's a weird sensation, but I've learned to recognize it when I see it and heed it because it tells it tells me that there's something valuable in what I'm doing with my idea at that point. And so, like, as much as I want to say, like, I could do that weird World War story as a preview uh, animation to my Faytown Noir, Choose Your Own Adventure, that is more me constructing a world and me telling a story about the world building I did for it. Um, I mean, when I built Faytown Noir, setting characters, there was some of this aspect of things gelling. And so that's how I knew I was getting somewhere with that world. But creating a prequel animation, that's that's me making an example story to illustrate some of that world. And it's not the world telling us a story through me. Um, And this feels more like the latter. This really feels like this is a story that wants to be told a certain way. And I'm in a position to see and hear that story and do my best to pass the story on to you. Now it's like photocopying. It's not going to be as good out here as it is when it started to gel in here. But it's gelling in here, and like I can keep it to myself and it never amounts to anything. Or I can share it, and that's the more important thing. And it's one of the reasons why I want to build a community of creative people working on projects together here on YouTube, giving each other prompts, encouragement, checking in with each other's progress on a regular basis, encouraging words and motivational support. Because you can have all the great ideas in the world, but we're mortal. There's going to be a day where we're not here to have those ideas. And so if we don't get them out of our heads and in front of other people in some way, those things are lost. And so when you have an experience where a story is ready to be told through you, I feel like it's not really a responsibility, but it's a partnership between the world of ideas and the creators who make those ideas real. And it's a horrible shame if nothing ever comes of those ideas, and I want to see some of that happen. And so I have to be what I want to see in the world, and so I have to create some of the. I don't have to, but like I want to support others, and I also want to create things and get them out of here, share them with other people, and you know maybe you don't like it. That's okay. But creating an idea and sharing it is important to me. And I'm rambling again. We got past 35 minutes, but that idea has lodged itself tightly in my brain there. Yeah, that'll be a hell of a thing. All right, I'm going to go start writing and scripting this, see what I can make with this. It's got a cast. The cast size is a little difficult, but I'll see what I can do with it. Oh, okay. I guess I'll see you guys tomorrow. Hopefully with a little bit more to share. Have a good one.